We've already said then there were 5 crew positions. Ian's already taken us through the driver's position. What we've done now is pop across to the right of the driver, and we're now in the radio operator or the bow gunner's position. So the bow gunner was exactly the same person that operated the radios. Quite clearly on the left there you can see the original radios that come with Tiger 131. Various combinations of radios, obviously depending on whether it was a command vehicle or not. Shortwave usually, however the command vehicles have the ability to actually do longer signals, i.e. more high powered. Very simple in this position here, and actually it's quite comfy and quite roomy. You can see directly in front of me is the first of our 2 MG34s. Obviously the other one is mounted coaxially with the main armament. The setup for it is quite simple. The interesting thing to note, of course, for the MG34 was slightly different to the ones that were ground mounted or mounted on armoured vehicles. The fact that the barrels on the armoured vehicle ones were 3/4 armoured. So that was just to protect it against shrapnel, etc. A very simple brow pad that the bow gunner used to use there, and also a very simple singular sighting system that was used to aim it. You'll also notice, as Ian mentioned before there, also to the front of there you can see the transmission assembly right down at the front there. So obviously, as Ian said, when you are driving it, incredibly noisy, not only for the driver but also for the bow gunner. Across the right hand side, stowage, you can see where the rounds were kept there, and also there are various stowage positions all over. We'll look at some of those later on for the main armament rounds, the majority being held actually inside the turret, under the turret floor. And as Ian pointed out in the driver's cab, one of the filler points for the final drive. So obviously one of the driver's cab, and this is the one across the right hand side for the other side. I've moved down from the commander station into the gunner station, so directly beneath where the commander would sit. As you can see, not a great deal of room. Just to the right of me is the breech and the breech assembly. Straight ahead of the gunner is the gunner sight. In this case it's the 9 Bravo binocular type sight. Quite a very simple and very effective sight, gave you 2.5 times magnification and a field of view of 25 degrees. The graphical pattern was also quite simple, and hopefully we'll be able to give you a close-up of that later on, but in essence it consisted of a number of inverted V's on the graphical pattern. Moving across from that and directly located underneath where the breech is, you can see we've got the elevation hand wheel, so that means that the gunner can elevate and depress the main armament. And another important part of the elevation hand wheel, of course, is on the other side. We've also got the trigger, which is used by the gunner when firing the main armament. A couple of very important things on the floor. Directly beneath the gunner we've got a number of foot pedals. One of them is a rocker type pedal, and this was the means for power traverse for the Tiger 1. So pushing forward and putting it down with your heel on there would turn the turret left and right under power traverse as well. And it was possible at full speed to do a complete 360 in 60 seconds on Tiger 1. And the final pedal for the gunner, down on the gunner's position, is a very simple pedal there that fires the MG34. So that's the means that he does it. Though apparently not particularly reliable, as obviously it is relying on a number of linkages linking up to the MG34. Moving across the left-hand side then of the gunner's station, one of the most important things was the azimuth indicator. Exactly the same as we've mentioned already on the commander's station. The azimuth indicator, again numbered from 1 to 12, so again it's the way that the commander and the gunner could link up. Commander could lay the gunner on quite quickly using that. Vision block on the left hand side there, we saw from the outside of the turret the vision block and obviously the periscope that we've got there. Directly above that were 2 breathing tubes. The breathing tubes, the only reason for them was it's just the means that the crew could get fresh air using the breathing tubes as opposed to putting on and wearing the full respirators or gas masks, which obviously was quite problematic. And finally we have the emergency gun firing circuit. So if there were problems, there's still a means for them to get the primed and charge that would set off the primer for the main armament. And the final thing to mention in the gunner's station then is obviously the traverse hand wheel. If there was a problem and we couldn't use power traverse, there's the ability there to use the traverse hand wheel. Before it could be used, there is, although you won't be able to see it, underneath the turret sill there is a locking lever that needs to be disengaged on there. Okay, now looking at the commander's station, you can see there the angle I'm actually sat at the moment is quite limited for space in here. Working our way around, obviously you've got the seats, which is just underneath the camera at the moment there. You've also got the traverse gearbox. Located on the traverse gearbox was a hand wheel for the commander. This was the auxiliary hand wheel for the turret traverse. You can also see there, we mentioned about the smoke grenade discharges on the outside of the vehicle. This is one of the control panels to fire one of the banks. And located underneath there, there are just 3 buttons that actually fire the smoke grenade discharges. Various stowage located around where the commander would sit, stowage for the gas mask, stowage for a flare pistol, and also any stowage for small arms as well. And also, we'll get to rotate around at the moment, you can see where we pointed on the outside of the turret, you've got the ports there where the commander can fire a small arms actually outside. Located around number of vision blocks, 6 vision blocks as we pointed from the outside. And also, if you went up, you might be able to make out the azimuth indicator, located or numbered 1 to 12 on the interior of the commander's cupola or turret ring there, just at the top. Last thing to point out in the commander's station, you've got this thin metal shield here. The only reason the shield was put there was to prevent, or in the eventuality of a flashback in the turret, that would give the commander some protection. We're now in the loader station, and a few of the key things to point out. Now, obviously, one of the big things about Tiger 1s we mentioned earlier on was the fact that the gun was absolutely so potent with the 88mm. A few key things to point out on the breech then. One of the most obvious things there, you can see the transit bar. And all the transit bar did was hook the breech up when the gun was not in combat use to prevent damage to it as well. As we said before, the recoil was a real problem for the 88mm and fitting it onto the chassis. So what they did was actually put a recuperator and a buffer on there to absorb some of that recoil. One of the things I will put out is in a moment, as well as also the recoil indicator. A couple of key things on there, just to the floor there, you can see there's a catcher tray. All that did was actually catch the cases when they came out of the breech. And also just to the right of the breech there was a safe fire lever. Again, very, very simple design. It just meant that the loader had to make sure it was in the fire position, otherwise the electric circuit wouldn't be completed prior to firing. Moving away across to the right, you can see, although not fitted at the moment, was the mounting for the MG34. Again, reports of lots and lots of problems with the MG34 on Tiger 1 as far as stoppages were concerned. Also, you notice just to the right of the mount there's the number 2. You may have noticed they've been going around, there are various numbers located in Tiger 131. It is numbered 1 to 14, and all that meant was it was the 14 checks that before Tiger 1 did deep wading, that would have to be done beforehand. So there are 14 things that had to be dealt with before it could submerge or do deep wading. Moving away across to the right there, you also see, again, it's marked number 8, one of the vision blocks we saw from the outside there. So the loader had a pretty poor field of view from the inside there. The loader did have his own seats in the stow position at the moment. It just swings out and folds down there. And also the stowage. Now the stowage on Tiger 1, it was capable of carrying 92 rounds. The rounds themselves were usually an equal split between high explosive and armoured piercing. Various stowage positions, there are some stowage positions underneath the floor, there's also some next to the driver, and there are also some stowage positions on the sills located around the outside there. You can just see at the moment one of the rounds located in there. Clipped into position and very easy to get to. As we mentioned before, the hardest thing by far with the Tiger was actually restowing it after they'd run out of ammunition. Moving away across to the right, we've also got another gas mask on there, and you can see now the inside of the emergency or escape hatch with a very, very good thing telling you it's very heavy on there, which we said before. And also you can see just to the top right of that, we looked at it from the outside of the turret, we've also got the ventilation fan. And also on the right hand side we have the gun balance spring casing, which in essence is just an oversized damper. And finally in the loader station, just moving across here, you can see there is a leather pad there. That was just to actually buffer some of the rounds as they were ejected from the breech. Also we've already pointed out there that they're catching the empty projectiles. And what I mentioned before there, really in essence a recoil indicator, which interestingly enough has sort of not changed in design much to many tanks. All the recoil indicator was, we've already said it's hydraulically assisted, the breech. It was just an indication there of how far and how well the fluid was reacting for the recoil. It could recoil up to 620mm, but the marker on there would go up to 580. After that, it would have a ceasefire mark on there, just to tell you there were problems.